Can y'all hear me now? Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me now? At all? There. All right. Aren't y'all lucky? There's 6 of these resolutions that I've brought involving crypto mining stuff. I'm going to try to be very brief. Probably by the time we get through all of this, I'm going to feel like I've completed the special task, Representative Wooten. But anyway, in an effort to be brief, I'm just going to say this. Number one, I've heard the questions about, I've got some anxiety about voting to do some of this stuff in a fiscal session. I understand that. I've been here. This is I'm in my 6th term and last term. And nobody's in more of a hurry to wrap this up and get back to work than me. However, we have a job to do. And sometimes, we have to deal with things, and sometimes it's prudent to deal with them now rather than later. I would, if you don't agree with me, go sit by one of these residences that's close to a crypto mine. I don't really want to get into a debate on crypto mining, Bitcoin, or the industry. All I'm here to do is say, let's do what the Senate has done. Let's vote all of these out of here. Let's have the debate. Let all the interested parties come together, work on a piece of legislation. Hopefully we can condense it into 1 or 2 bills. I don't care who runs it. I just want to see the right thing get done. And so with that, I'm going to ask that we read the resolution in title only and ask for a good vote.
Representative Wardlaw, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized for a question.
So I just like to associate things with what I understand, and I'm a very simple mind. I'm a farmer, so dirt farmer. We're real slow. Are you taking a birdshot approach here with shooting all these bullets to see which one actually hits, or is there one of these that's more important than others, or can you kind of explain why you need 6 to take care of one issue?
I'd be happy to. I'm not taking a birdshot approach, albeit I could see why you would ask that question. I feel like all 6 are important, or I wouldn't be down here running them. And I think that when I looked at the other resolutions that were being brought up by my colleagues, I don't feel like they were as wide as what I wanted to see a conversation had. We have to pass a resolution in order to deal with, for a piece of legislation, to deal with the language in the resolutions that we pass. So that's why I'm here presenting these. Like I said, the Senate has already okayed this. Let's do what they've done and vote these out of here so we can have this conversation. And with that, I'd ask for a good vote.
Representative Miller has explained the resolution. Would anyone like to speak against the resolution? Representative Ray, you're recognized to speak against the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, if I could, first I just want to say something general on this topic. I think, at the risk of stating the obvious, I think that all of us agree and realize at this point that digital asset mining, Bitcoin mining, whatever you want to call it, if it's done improperly and by the wrong people, there are negative externalities that pretty much everybody, I think, at this point, is in agreement that we want to address. And we've seen those issues play out with the facility at Bono in Faulkner County, and I've been out to that facility and seen it, and I've heard the noise that it makes, and I can't imagine what it's like to live next door to that facility. It has to be torture, and many of you probably saw that on the CBS special. The question that we face today is, which piece of substantive legislation should we consider in the middle of a budget session? And I think we ought to be fairly selective about which ones we choose to take up. I think we ought to take up the ones that address issues that we have consensus about dealing with. And when it comes to this issue, I think there are some things that we have consensus on. When it comes to, for example, noise mitigation, sound reduction, number one, foreign ownership of these entities, number two, and then the location, that they shouldn't be able to prop up next to a church or a school or a residential area. I think those are things that we all generally agree on. This resolution doesn't address that. Thankfully, we do have some resolutions that do address that. Senator Josh Bryant's and Representative McClure's resolution does address those issues. Senator Ervin and Representative Moore's resolution does address those issues. But, as I was listening to the debate on this resolution in committee yesterday, there were a couple of things that kept being said over and over. Things like, well, it's not well understood. There's so much that we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. Those were all direct quotes from the presentations that I heard. And I think that passing a law just because we don't understand something is a bad way of rushing into passing a law and legislating. I kept hearing people say, what about the computers? I think someone said, what about asthma? Well, what about it? Tell me more. Asking a question is not evidence. Asking a question is not an argument. And I've heard people say we should just approve all of these resolutions and then send them all to the committees. And I don't think that's our job here today. I think our job is to figure out which resolutions address the specific problems that we know are afflicting Arkansans, and then pass that resolution or those resolutions, send them to the committees, and then fix this issue. I know the Senate voted them all through. I don't think it's too much of a secret that there's a lot of political machinations going on down there. And I understand that, but that's not a great way to make policy. I think we can do a better job by vetting these individual resolutions, picking one or two to refer to committee that address the issues that we know Arkansans are dealing with. So this resolution specifically bans computers that were made or assembled by a covered foreign entity in the bill. I'm 100% for addressing the foreign ownership of these entities, but it's not clear to me from any of the presentation in committee or any of the presentation of the bill on the floor a minute ago what would be accomplished by banning computers made in a foreign country. I'm open to the argument that I'm missing something, but none of that evidence has been presented. Most of these computers, as I understand it, are made in Malaysia and Indonesia. They're run with parts made by companies like Texas Instruments, NVIDIA, and so forth. There's a lot of things that are manufactured in China that run on U.S. parts, like all of our iPhones. I think the same goes for Teslas. My understanding is also that these machines that are used to mine digital assets are single-purpose machines. They're not, you can't use them to spy on people or anything like that. So just asking questions about this, I don't think is an argument. I would also point out this resolution also makes it a felony, a Class D felony, to own one of these computers or to use it for digital asset mining. So it wouldn't just make it illegal, it would make you a felon if you engage in digital asset mining and use it. The bill doesn't have a fiscal or a sentencing impact statement that I can tell. So I think we should absolutely prohibit foreign ownership of these types of entities. I just don't think we're accomplishing anything with this particular resolution because it doesn't do any of those things. So I would ask for a no vote on this resolution so that we can move on to consider the resolutions that actually address the issues I outlined.
Representative Shepherd, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized for a question.
And thank you for everything you stated. I simply want to do what's best for Arkansans. And Mr. Speaker, I don't know if this is the appropriate question to Representative Ray, but you stated we should choose the best ones. Out of the 6 that are proposed here, which ones are the best?
I think the ones, the resolution by Senator Bryant and Representative McClure address all of the issues that I outlined that we know are tangible problems that have been documented in our state. I also think that Senator Ervin and Representative Moore's resolution addresses some of those issues. There are pieces of those resolutions that I prefer more than others, but those are the 2 that I think address most clearly the issues. So I'd appreciate a no vote.
Representative Ray has left the well. Representative Ray has spoken against the resolution. Would anyone like to speak for the resolution? Representative Richmond, you're recognized to speak for the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. I'm not speaking specifically for this particular resolution, as this is the one we need to go with, but I'm speaking for all 8 of them. It is my belief that we simply do not have the knowledge right now here in this body to go, this one is the one I want to go with. I think we need to take these, and I know that it may take a little more time to do this, but I think that time will be well invested because here about a year ago, we literally squeezed one off in our foot, and we have this self-inflicted wound that we have to address. And the only thing worse than doing nothing at all is doing something half-baked and then going back out to our constituents and trying to explain to them why we still screwed it up the second time around. Trying to limit this to just a couple that might be that, 1 or 2 of us says this is great and that's great. Well, I think there's good parts in all of them. That all of them are worth looking at and doing some hard work and coming up with the best solution that we can so that when your constituent calls you, you have an answer that you can stand behind other than, well, we just wanted to get the heck out of here, and so we picked one, went with it, and I'm sorry that it didn't help you in your particular situation. We may come at the end of all this with all of these and go, geez, this is not good enough. Let's put it in an interim study. Let's work on it, and then we take care of it at the next regular session. I hope not. I hope we can put a patch on this thing at least. Because right now, there's a lot of our own colleagues here that are catching a lot of grief. And one of these days, one of these things are going to show up close to where you live. And your people are going to be upset too. I don't have any in my district. I haven't really paid any attention to this until we got down here. But I know it's coming. And I want to at least be able to say that, we tried to work the problem, the whole problem. Instead of just going, well, I'll do this one or I'll do that one. That way we can get out and get back to where we need to go and do what we need to do. This is too important to take a shortcut. Thank you.
Representative Richmond has spoken for the resolution. Would anyone like to speak against the resolution? Would anyone like to speak for the resolution? Representative Meeks, you're recognized to speak for the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I represent the community of Bono. It's my citizens that are suffering underneath the crypto mine that y'all heard about on the CBS Evening News and through some of the other folks. We have got to do something to give those folks some relief. One of the fundamental jobs of government is the protection of its citizens. And by us failing to address this is us failing to protect our citizens like we are supposed to. I, too, because this is my district and I'm your technology chair, I, too, had some bills ready. I was ready with some resolutions, but I decided after I learned about Representative Miller's work, Representative McClure, Senator Bryant, that they had all these resolutions that I felt that I would be better served as your technology chair to be one to help moderate, to bring and rein all these together to create a product that we can all go home and be proud of to regulate this industry properly. So I didn't do any of that stuff. What I'm going to ask for you today is to go ahead, let's pass all 8 of these out to give us the flexibility that we need to create the regulations and the protections that our citizens not only need but deserve. Representative Ray has brought up some good points. Let us hash all that out in the committee, assuming all that's going to come to my committee. Give us the flexibility to hash all that out in the committee process. Let everybody come to the table so that we have the flexibility to do what we need to get done. Now, I'll say this. With 1799, that's the House bill that Representative Richmond talked about. Whether we pass that or not, we would still be in the same boat. I know that bill's getting a lot of flack, but if we had done nothing, we would still be in the same situation as we are now. The cities and the counties just do not have the weight of law to deal with this properly. We have got to handle it from here at the state level, and that is what I am asking you to do. I'll go ahead and take a question, and then I'll have a closing statement after.
Representative Eves, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
Just kind of want to understand what you think the goal is we're doing here. Is the idea we want to pass all of these resolutions out, send it to committee, and then end up with one bill with all of these ideas hashed out in committee so that, I don't think that the House floor is where we need to be hashing out all of these different ideas.
Correct. That's my hope, is that we consolidate these down into 1 or 2 good bills that we can bring back to the floor. My hope is that we don't come back with 8 separate bills. I want to come back with 1 or 2 good products that we can vote on and be good.
Representative Richardson, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
So if you could help me, Representative Meeks, since you represent the folks in that area, what is the primary problem that we're attempting to solve?
Noise and foreign ownership.
Thank you.
And that...
Representative Unger, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
Representative Meeks, does the Technology Committee have the horsepower to do what needs to be done in the next 2 weeks?
I believe so. And I'm going to kind of like whack-a-mole here. Yeah.
Representative McCullum, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
How does this resolution or bill, if at all, deal with the noise or the foreign ownership aspect of the issue?
Well, I think it says so in the foreign entity and digital asset mining. And again, this is just to make sure that we have all the flexibility that we need to get something done. What I don't want to happen is for us to come up with a solution and then be hampered because we don't have the right flexibility created by having these resolutions not passed.
Representative McCollum, for what purpose?
Follow up.
You're recognized.
I guess besides the title, how does this resolution deal with those said main issues?
Well, again, dealing with the foreign ownership. Again, I'm just trying to create the most flexibility so that these sponsors in my committee have all the tools that we need in order to get this done. And there's probably some of the tools here that we won't need or we won't use or that we could delay until the 25 session. But we need to have that opportunity to figure out which one of those we will need and won't need.
Representative Hawk, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
Representative Meeks, you said as technology chair, your hope is that all these representatives would get together. Have you had an opportunity to talk with all of them to get to that goal, or is this just a pie in the sky? I hope this is going to happen.
I've been talking to these representatives for months now. Yep. So, and all the ones I've talked to so far have all been open to working together to come up with a solution.
Representative Rose, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized.
Thank you. Representative Meeks, thank you. I've been reading through these, and you can kind of get them a little merged together if you're not careful. But I did hear the question about the foreign ownership, and you said that this bill addressed that. But as I was reading through, just kind of clarify, this is talking about covered foreign entity that has produced the computers themselves, not foreign ownership of the digital asset mining facility. So
Correct.
Could you clarify if this bill is about ownership of the facility or the production of the equipment, please? Thank you.
Right, and I'm trying, when I'm up here speaking, I'm trying to speak generally of all 8 bills because I don't want to have to come back up here 8 times and to support all that. So again, my hope is to get as many of these passed as possible to create the flexibility we need to get this done.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. And I guess that's my question, as we're voting on these, I would like personally be able to make a specific vote. So are you saying that this particular bill that we're discussing does not cover foreign ownership?
From my understanding, it doesn't cover the ownership of the facility. It's the equipment that's being produced.
Okay, thank you,
Yes.
sir.
Representative Beatty, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry.
Let's hear your inquiry.
My question is, based on what Representative Meeks said, is under our rules, can you take all of the resolutions that are presented and prepare one bill and consolidate those, or do you have to have individual bills for each of the resolutions?
Parliamentarian can correct me if I am incorrect. Ultimately, the resolution, you have to, per the Constitution and the joint rules, you have to have a resolution, identical resolutions passed on both ends to allow the introduction of a bill. And so any bill that is filed has to relate back to a resolution. So there can be the only bills that can be filed would be a bill that ties back to a resolution that's been passed, adopted by both ends. So there can't be some separate bill filed at a later date per the rules. Now, if there is discussions, if there's things that need to be tweaked within the confines of the resolution that's been passed that can be incorporated into that bill, then that is possible, but it's fairly limited, I would think it's fair to say, in the ability, because it ultimately has to relate back to the resolution that was passed in the first place. So I think there's some ability to make some changes to add or detract from a bill, but there can't be necessarily a separate bill filed. It may be that things can be incorporated in one or the other. Representative Eubanks, for what purpose?
Question for the chair. So
Let's hear the
we
question.
have multiple resolutions dealing with this issue, and all of them may not incorporate all aspects of what the other resolutions have. So there could be more, if several of these resolutions were passed, there could actually be several bills that were filed that would and could possibly be passed by both ends, both chambers, and they could complement each other. Is that possible?
I think it's possible, and just by the same token, just as we do during a regular session, there are multiple bills that are passed that could conflict with each other as well, and then you get into a discussion about what was passed, when did it go into law, and ultimately at some point it can even involve code revision. But with regard to them can they be complementary? Certainly. Could they also be contradictory? That's a possibility as well. Each bill just gets taken up on its own merit on the face of what is before us.
Colleagues,
Representative Brown, for what purpose?
Question.
For me or him?
I'm going to ask this of Representative Meeks.
You're recognized.
You might want to chime in. Representative Meeks, I just want to understand that if we pass all 6 of these resolutions, that there could be aspects of each resolution that you determine are totally unworkable, unnecessary, or that by looking at all the concerns you can come up with a consensus on the best way to address an issue. Do I have a correct understanding? I mean, can we actually toss some of these ideas out that might be in a resolution?
Yes. My hope is that by the time this process is done, we can consolidate and come back to the House with 2-3 good bills to address this. But I want to make sure, because none of us knows the future, that we have all the tools that we need to handle this properly.
Follow up, and to be sure, by doing this, we're going to try to come up with legislation that does not conflict with each other. Is that correct?
That is my hope.
Representative Beck, for what purpose? You're recognized.
So I think this is a question possibly for the parliamentarian. The final bill that would come out of the committee that we all worked that got worked out in the committee that came back. The speaker says that it would refer back to one of these resolutions. So does that mean that that final bill could refer to multiple resolutions that we passed? So there would be one bill that would refer to maybe, I'm going to use this as an example, there are 6 resolutions that Representative Miller's, could they refer to like maybe 3 of his and then get some of the other resolutions? How does that work? Am I making myself clear there or not?
Parliamentarian can correct me if I'm wrong. Ultimately, it's hard to answer these because it ultimately depends on what the bill says, and then we have to review that. Myself and the parliamentarian would have to review that to see does it relate back. And a lot of it depends on the language of the resolution and then the language of the bill that is filed. But ultimately, the bill has to relate back to a resolution that has been filed. Does that mean that multiple components could go into one? We would have to see the bill because I don't think we can sit here and answer. I would say it would probably be very difficult to because, quite honestly, it's very specific to the fact that you have to pass a resolution to introduce the bill. Might that mean that you have that even if there was items agreed to or that folks wanted to pass, that might have to be separated into these multiple bills because ultimately it comes back to the resolution that has been before the House, before the Senate, and has been voted on, and in that case would have been approved by a supermajority. So I think anything we say at this point is largely speculation, except that I think the parliamentary advice would be if this passes, any bill that's filed needs to relate back as closely as possible or within reason and be able to relate back to a resolution because the farther you get away from that, there could be questions arise.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's why I want to try to get all these passed is to make sure we've got all the tools. And colleagues, I'll finish up by saying this. And again, if anybody has any questions on this topic, because I know it's a fairly complicated topic, please see me afterwards or as we work through this, and I'll be happy to try to answer some of those further. But the main point I want to leave you with is this. In this field, like any other field, there's good actors and bad actors. And unfortunately, in the last year, we've had bad actors come into our state with complete disregard to the welfare of our citizens and our natural resources. And it's our responsibility to take action to fix that on behalf of our citizens. So with that, I would ask, please, for a good vote.
Before we go to those who might want to speak against, just to be clear, I don't want to have said anything that influences. The bottom line is the bill, when filed, we have to see that. Anything that we're saying here is speculation because we couldn't get into all the possibilities of what could occur, but obviously I would just refer back to the joint rule and the Constitution as far as what the process is, and the process refers to the passage of a resolution that then allows the introduction of a bill. Representative Meeks has spoken for the resolution. Would anyone like to speak against the resolution? Would anyone like to speak for the resolution? Representative McNair, you recognize to speak for the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a tough subject for a physical session. Just like Representative Meeks, I didn't want to come up here 8 times because we don't just have 6, we've got 8 resolutions. I believe they all need to pass, but I started dealing with this in November of 22. My district got hit hard with it. It was kind of in the works, and I've heard the conversations. Had we not passed 851, we would still have the problems with them. That is true to a certain extent. But also, after session, my first town hall was a gentleman from New York that came to Harrison with 851 in his hand, and he said, "We are here because you all did this." That's what the public saw. So I requested at the special session to discuss this and was told there was enough interest to do it. And I think we've dug ourselves a bigger hole since then. there's just lots of things out there, and we can sit here all day, but we can figure that in committee. Our constituents have not had a chance to have their concerns, in my opinion. I think we should pass all 8 of them, not just this. I think we should pass all 8. We can do that in our committee session, and we can decide what's right. But again, I don't believe it's fair to our constituency to leave here, even though it's a physical session, and not address this issue. Thank you.
Representative McNair has spoken for the resolution. Would anyone like to speak against the resolution? Would anyone like to speak for the resolution? Representative Brown, you recognize to speak for the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I wasn't planning on speaking, but listening to the debate has encouraged me to do so. Many of you have heard the story of my involvement with crypto, but for those who haven't, I thought I'd share it. Back in June or July, I remember it was hot. It was warm, but it wasn't quite yet hot. A good friend of mine who's a justice of the peace in Faulkner County called me up and said, "Hey, Matt, we're doing a noise ordinance on the crypto there at Bono, or trying to. Would you like to come out and see the facility?" And I hadn't seen it yet. So I said, "Sure." He said, "I got my kids with me, if that's all right." I said, "Yeah, that's fine." So we drove out there. We went to the crypto facility, and there's a substation, electrical substation, just down the highway from it that feeds it. Across the highway, probably about 100, 150 yards from the entry, not even across from the property. Directly in front of the lady at Bono whose house has been in the news. And he parked his truck, he rolled down the windows, and we sat there for just a minute. We were actually waiting for someone else who was going to meet us and take us to the house. We're just shooting the breeze, listening to the birds. Kids in the back seat are carrying on about Pokemon or something, I don't know what. And this security guard walks out of the crypto place. And he's eyeballing us. He's looking at us. You know, he wants us to make sure that we know that he knows we're there. Okay, whatever, dude. He looked like he was a reject from one of those country fried chicken places in a gas station or something, I don't know what. Greasy shirt, the whole 9 yards. And he had a little Ford Escort there in front of the facility. It said security on the side. So he's watching us. And then he goes over and he pops the trunk of his, what I now deem the tactical Ford Escort. And he pulls out an AR-15. And he turns around and he shows it to us. He's very proud of his rifle. And he makes this big production of loading it, one shell at a time, while he's eyeballing us. And then he cycles the gun. He wants to make sure that we know he's got it chambered. And then he gets into the front seat of his tactical Ford Escort and pulls out his tactical GoPro and starts surveilling us. Now, the first thought that went through my mind is, this is ludicrous. This is the reaction we get just for being out here to listen. My second thought was, dude, do you really think you're the only person that's armed in this whole situation? But now, I will admit that I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I know a little bit about crypto. Not a whole lot, but I know a little bit. And I will admit that I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. And I know what I saw. And I saw someone come out of a crypto facility, one of these bad actor crypto facilities like Representative Meek spoke about, pulled out a firearm and made a big production of loading it because a legislator and a JP had the temerity to pull in across the road, down the highway, just for a listen. Now, I haven't decided which of the resolutions I'm going to support, but I think I would encourage each of you, let's send these to committee, let's send all of them to committee, let's hash it out in committee, and let's get a solution to our constituents. We need to stop this now and get to the bottom of this, and I'd appreciate a good vote.
Representative Brown has left the well. Would anyone like to speak against